So welcome everyone again. Happy to see you, and let's talk a little bit about birds this evening. So as we always do, we will talk about what's going on. Hopefully you all have some wonderful stories to share about your adventures out and about, because I'm mostly stuck inside. And some of you know, because I've talked about, I'm teaching 25 credits this semester, so 8 different courses. So I'm stuck inside a lot. And luckily, I can live vicariously through you all. So I want to hear about your bird sightings. We'll do a quick identification challenge. We'll talk about some committee business, see where we're going in the near future, which is an exciting field trip that Harry has planned. And then we'll have some details about the recent counts that Bill has helped us out in. And then we'll move on to our monthly presentation. So I'll start off. Again, I'm mostly in my home, but I have windows on either side of me. And for some reason, there's been a little downy woodpecker that likes to fly at my window right above my desk and bang on the screen. So that's been a delight, although it frequently scares me because it just kind of lands and I jump. But hopefully you're seeing more than a crazy little downy woodpecker. So what have we all been seeing lately?
I've got a yellow-rumped warbler that is chasing every other bird everywhere in my yard. He chases even titmice, along with chickadees and house finches. And he's been there about a week or more.
Can you hear me, Sean, this time?
Yes.
Oh, yay. I've been wanting to tell folks I have had 2 hummingbirds coming to my feeder since November 18th. And I thought the first one was a ruby throat, which it is. The second one was smaller and has a small bend to its bill. They were both immature birds. So it's been wonderful watching them grow up. And about 3 weeks ago, the smaller one started having brown and orange in its armpits. So that started giving us a little bit more of an idea. And since then, it's last couple days, I've seen the flanks or sides or whatever are starting to have some brown. I am not certain which one it is. We keep going back and forth and I can't get a picture. He's really skittish. But anyway, hopefully I'll be able to get a picture. And if anybody wants to come over and help me see if they can figure out what it is, I'd be delighted to talk to them. But it's been a real joy having the 2 of them here. We thought there were 3 originally, and there may have been, but that third one, it was like a ruby throat, only its coloring was wrong. And I haven't seen that for a while. So I know at least we still have 2.
John,
And James Abbott in the chat suggested either possibly Rufus or Allen's. And James also noted that
you're gonna have to catch that and probably have a bander look at it to make that determination. But those are the most likely vagrants.
Do you want to tell them about the cackling goose, James?
Yeah, he's hanging out with the migrants there's about 400 Canada geese that roost on Elliott's Creek that my dock is on the eastern shore, and he's out there with them. It's kind of funny because normally they look so much smaller than the giant resident Canadas, but these are all thick-necked migratory Canadas, so he's still smaller, but it's not as stark. But it's out there. It's been there most of the winter whenever the flock is roosting on the creek. They're usually there in the morning before they take off for the farm fields.
Very cool.
Sean, this is C.L. Tanner. You were talking about the downy woodpecker. For Christmas, my wife gave me a security camera, and I built a taller box for the bluebirds and put it in there. And almost every night I've had a downy woodpecker spending the night in there. And then he'll leave in the morning for the day. And then about 4:30 to 5:30, he comes back for the evening every night.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, to see it on the video is pretty.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yes.
Yeah, my son has a swing set And if we go out sometimes after, because my classes get done late, but I like to go for a little walk and it's normally getting dark and he'll want to swing, but there's chickadees that are sleeping inside. So there's normally 3 or 4 chickadees that fly out if we swing too late into the evening.
I had a summer tanager on January 23, which I had a picture of. I couldn't find where there'd ever been one in January in Chesapeake area. I don't know if y'all seen one, but I looked at eBird, I couldn't find any. And that was confirmed.
We've also been having something I've never seen before, flocks of bluebirds come into the feeder like 7 or 8 times a day, and there's like 20 to 25 bluebirds all at the same time on my feeder. But I've never seen bluebirds in a flock.
Everyone seems to be finding really good things, and that's a cool thing to see. All those little dots of blue, like
It's just like
pink drops.
it's like blue wings everywhere.
Wow. I bet it's really pretty.
Well, I finally got my butt up to Gloucester and saw the evening grosbeak, so that was a life bird for me.
Outstanding. They're impressive. Just the color so rich with those birds. Bluebirds and grosbeaks, and it's nice to be out and about. Happy you all getting to go and do things. Anyone else?
I just want to thank Bill for being on those evening grosbeaks, because he and I were the ones out there. Thanks, Bill.
No sweat, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, so the dip on that hummingbird's bill could be Allen's. This is the Sibley page for Allen's and Rufus. Like I said, it's really hard to tell that without good photos, but the bill dipping could indicate Allen's. Those would be the 2 most common vagrant hummingbirds.
Yeah,
Obviously, Virginia was blessed with a buff-bellied hummingbird in Norfolk this winter. But those are typically the ones we see.
yeah, those are the ones we're going through. We've got a number of books, and it's just that bent bill, and then the color isn't yet. Another couple of weeks, we'll be able to tell if it's still here.
Okay.
Yeah, I have one more if y'all have time. This is Patty Von Olin, and I put it in the chat. I saw 2 at 2 different times pileated woodpeckers. One I saw in Virginia Beach in a neighborhood in a tall tree, solo, busy pecking. And then yesterday there was one in the Riverside neighborhood up in a tall tree on Mimosa Drive. So anybody who lives in Riverside, they were solo. They didn't have anybody nearby. So I don't know. Y'all know that if that's normal. I don't think I don't see them very often. They're pretty noisy. They're easy to find once they're around, maybe.
Yeah, and a spectacular bird to see. I like them. They just look like little pterodactyls, but they're a substantial little bird. All right, so let's do our identification challenge. Thanks everyone for sharing. And this should be a relatively easy identification challenge tonight, but I've been inspired by my rusty birding abilities because I have some hawks that are visiting the yard in Hampton. And sometimes I think it's something and then I keep second guessing myself. And so I put this challenge together to help me out. So if you want to use the chat or yell it out, you can. I took all these from shared photos on iNaturalist that weren't copyrighted, and they're all from Virginia. So Angela's saying Cooper's hawk. Okay, so we have Cooper's. And a lot of us are ringing in with Coopers. Yeah, so Cooper's or Sharpshin. Now, one of the things that, at least from iNaturalist, this is saying it's Cooper's, and kind of looking at that rounded tail, it's probably Cooper's. What about this one? So we have Cooper's again. And so at least for the research grade and the 8 or so people that looked at this going back and forth, it seems that people are thinking this is a Sharpshin. And then this one, so a lot of you are making the same faces that I'm making as I'm sitting at home looking at birds, trying to remember. So this is also a Sharpshin, but its front wings aren't pulled forward like you typically see, but you can tell by the breasting pattern that it is Sharpshin. And then finally, one more. And it's also a bad grainy photo, but just in the field, we don't always get the best images. But this was also through iNaturalist with the research grade, meaning multiple people are saying this is a Sharpshin as well. So I just put a few things together to help us start to remember, and we're not so sure. Here's some identification hints. I'm going to go past this relatively quickly. If you hadn't visited this site before, the Feeder Watch has this really nice table. And if you click on these table entries, they give you some comparisons between the two. They also have a really nice identification tips, and something that you always don't find is the calls. So I'm going to put that on Facebook in case you want to check that out. And again, I haven't been birding in a while, so my skills are getting rusty, and I can always learn things. So I thought I would share my adventures of trying to learn new things with you all, even though you are much better than I am. So moving on, I don't know if there's any new members here tonight. Is there? If so, I would like to welcome you. Hearing no one.
Did John send out an email that we had somebody?
I got a few emails from John of people joining, but I don't know if they're necessarily here. They were added to the list. Okay, so Christina's a new member. It's nice to meet you, Christina. Thank you for coming this evening. Anyone else? I don't want to leave you out. I want to welcome you. We're a nice, tight group. Okay. How about Tom? How are you doing? And how's the newsletter?
The newsletter's been out for a while, and with good writing by Pete Peterman, Jane Frigo, Harry and Rochelle Colstock, Sean Dash, and a little bit from Bill Bay. I'd like to make sure we have congratulations out to Bill and to Sean for the winning the photo contest in November, and I guess I covered that before. It's and again, Brian Barmore and Pete won in December. If you've got stuff you'd like to come into the March and April newsletter, please try to get it in by the 20th of this month. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tom. Michael, anything related to publicity or the photo contest or anything in general within your realm of responsibilities?
Not so much with the photo contest, as everyone received that message today from you. We have the new submissions for this month. I'm thinking about putting sort of follow up for a discussion we had last month that was, going through email about the value of membership with the club. And I'm thinking about putting something on Facebook of sort of, this is why you might want to join, and perhaps get some testimonials from some folks to put on there as well. I think, part of this club is a bargain to be a member, and so many great things are happening directly or indirectly with, funding various projects, etc. So I'm thinking about doing that. I might send something to you to send out to all the members, just to say if we can get some testimonials, and I'll put it together and we'll see how things go. Get some more members.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Wendy and Ellis, I know the webpage is always kept up to date and looking magnificent, but do you have anything to comment on or encourage members to do?
Can you hear me now? I don't have anything
Yes, we
to
can.
comment on other than I believe that educational thing you were going to send to Facebook should also be sent to the webpage, because we have a section on the webpage with educational material
Okay,
on it.
excellent. I can do that. Is the field trip scheduled for the 20th next Saturday, Harry?
Yes, that's correct.
You
And
wanna
now
comment
it's
on-
scheduled, but it's very individualized, since everyone will go down when they want to go down. They need to look at the website for ticket prices, and there's a lot of good information on the website at Sylvan Heights. You got birds from six continents, I believe, and it's just a really fascinating thing to get you spurred on to go out and see these places once we get the opportunities.
Great, thank you. And I know it was a big hit last year that people talked about that field trip for months following that field trip. So hopefully weather might be nice for us all to get out and travel a bit.
There's also, we do have another one scheduled for March. It'll be Virginia Beach areas. It's on the website if you have any questions.
Okay, great. Bill, now you have the next series of slides, so just let me know when you wish for me to advance them.
Will do. This was going to be my last slide, but that doesn't matter. This is fine, and I thank you, Sean, for adding the picture there. Give it a little live action. This is the results of our summary of our Newport News winter count, and I won't read it all to you, but that gives you the basics. And I will, I've got a little PDF I'm going to send. Actually, I've sent to Ellis that includes all the birds observed and the numbers, and that's posted at the website under the bird count section. So that'll give you all the details about what we saw. So it was a cold day, but the numbers weren't high, but I think we had a pretty good number of individuals. So, and next slide, please. I'll go over the Christmas bird count for 2020 results briefly. Next slide. So I'll let you all look at the participants here. And while you do that, I'll give a special shout out to Michael Meyer, who volunteered to lead and actually ended up going solo on the Newport News sector, which is one to do. And Michael had never done the sector before, so I was very appreciative of his work on that. Next slide.
You're welcome.
So here's a brief summary. And as depicted, all the numbers in parentheses refer to the 2019 corresponding numbers, just for a quick comparison.
And thank you, thank you, Sean, for the picture. It's very nice. And I was very glad to see 9 feeder watchers this year. I don't think we've ever had that many. This is more summary of some of the numbers. And this is why, if you're a leader, you have to fill out all those forms for me, because these are the details that Audubon demands. And as we saw last year, we do see a decline in the number of individuals, total individuals. The slope represents a decline of 591 birds per year. And just FYI, I chose 1993 as my start point because that's when we started consistently doing all 13 sectors in the circle.
So Bill, just a question. Has the sampling effort been the same through that time frame?
So I think that's a pretty big variable, Sean. And as you're a scientist, I think you could probably pick apart what we're doing. I can tell you that the people vary. I think in some sectors the same areas are being covered again and again, but that's a variable as well. In some sectors, people look at different areas, different geographic sites over time. So that's probably one of the inconsistencies that you would find.
Okay. No, I was just curious, like, at least from, what is it? I've been here 7 years now. So when you've given these reports in my memory, it doesn't seem like it's significantly fewer and fewer people every year. But I'm just curious, with my science mind, I'm thinking, well, is it sampling biased, or is it really some other kind of trend that's going on?
No, I don't think the level of participation is declining. So I don't think I could attribute it to that, unfortunately. So the number of species per year, you can see, is pretty erratic, but there is a slight increasing trend, and I don't know that you could call it significant, considering the variation and how small of a sampling our club effort represents. So it'd be interesting to compare against any statewide counts of species by year. Maybe the VBBA has seen more species. I know, as we've talked about, species are moving north generally. So maybe more species are moving in than are moving out in the wintertime. This is a new feature I wanted you all to see. It's the Christmas Bird Count Trends Viewer, and the link is there. Don't worry about copying it down. I'll have this in the newsletter as well as posted on the webpage. But it allows you to see by species and by location and by time period the trend that has been seen. So in this particular case, I picked the American kestrel, and I went for a state trend in Virginia, and that's from 1970 to 2019. And you can see Virginia's colored red, not quite the deep red, but the orange red, showing a decline of -0.25% per year. So not good news for the kestrels, and I think that's what most people would say is they are declining here. And just put in a plug for the Great Backyard Bird Count, which hopefully you're familiar with by now because it starts tomorrow. But if you go to birdcount.org, gives you everything you need to know. If you're an eBird user, you just have to go ahead and do it. So just count birds in your yard for 15 minutes at a time on one or more of those days, and submit it to eBird. And finally, even as cold as it's been, with winter weather advisories, et cetera, we can talk about the spring bird count, which is only just over a couple months away. So this year will be Saturday the 24th. This is the usual slide you see from me as to why you should do it. You all know how to do it. You know who to contact. That's me. So hopefully we'll get a good turnout again this year. Last year we canceled because of COVID, but I think we've learned how to manage outdoor activities safely. And so we'll follow the club's protocols for an outdoor event and hopefully have a good time. It's always a wonderful time to count birds. And that's all I have, unless anyone has questions.
I do have one about the bird count for this weekend. I'm just not sure. Are we counting just species of birds or numbers of each species?
So CL, it's like a feeder watch. So you'll be watching in your yard if you have feeders or not.
Right.
And of course, you'll count each species, but you'll be counting the highest number for each species that you see during each count period.
Okay.
So you can submit a checklist for as little as 15 minutes, or you can spend 2 hours. But you don't want to see, you might see the same cardinal coming back to your feeder 50 times. Well, that doesn't mean you saw 50.
Right.
You always count the highest number during the count period.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I am done. Bill had this wonderful data to share with everyone. If there's any general announcements, let's have those now. And if not, Pete's going to take over and introduce our wonderful speaker for the evening. Any general announcements going twice? All right. 3 times. James did put something in the chat, so do check out the chat about a webinar related to birding. I sent some things out about that and put it on, I think, the Facebook earlier, but make sure you do look at that link that James was kind enough to put in the chat. Pete, over to you, my friend.
Okay, it's my pleasure to once again introduce Jeff Wright. Jeff is a Virginia master naturalist and a former president of the Northern Neck of Virginia chapter. He is the VP of the Friends of Dragon Run. I think, Sean, you went and gave us a talk to them. He is a member of the Virginia Society of Ornithology, the North American Bluebird Society, the Northern Virginia Audubon Society, the Northern Neck Audubon Society, the American Birding Association, and the North American Butterfly Association. He serves as a county coordinator for the Old Growth Forest Network, compiler for butterfly counts and Christmas bird counts, and as a trail monitor for the Nature Conservancy in Virginia. Jeff's talk tonight, Birds in Our Yard, Helping Nature's Pairing, will be addressing the impact of climate change on birds and plants and how we can fine-tune our gardens to attract, enjoy, and help a wider variety of birds, and share this data to help science and conservation. Please welcome Jeff Wright once again to our meeting. Yay, Jeff, yay!
I'd like to thank everybody for having me back tonight. And I really say that was an impressive beginning to your meeting of the counts you've done over the winter and some of your planning for future events. And I really love what you showed there on the trends. I've had the privilege of being part of the Brook Christmas bird count for about 8 or 10 years now. And their data goes way back into the 1950s. And it's just an extraordinary trend, obviously in the wrong direction in terms of temperature. But you really see some of the big shifts in birds. It used to be pretty large numbers of black ducks. Now there's small numbers of black ducks. And you see a lot of that rotation. So some of the things that all of you are doing and a little bit of what I'm going to talk about tonight, I think really are important to citizen science and to feed data to distinguish academicians like Sean, to give them more food to chew on, to come up with some trends and ideas. So well done to all of you. Now, I think I hit the share the screen button here. And then I will see what I can bring up here. Okay, here. Pete, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Thing looks
So
good.
this isn't Pete, but it's Sean. But
Well, I wanted to say that in addition to all those very kind words that were said about me, the main thing I have is the fact that I went to the same high school as the gentleman that introduced me, and I got as far as I did because I was able to copy off his papers. Okay, well let me get going here and just tell you that the month of January and February have been fabulous for friends of mine taking pictures of birds in the snow. And I just wanted to emphasize the importance of your yard, your neighborhood, and the places you like to look out the window, have a feeder and things like that. Because a lot of things I'm going to talk about interrelate tonight to what's coming to your yard and what you can do to further attract things to your yard and help birds. We're all in the bird helping business, either through our accounts or other things. So a friend of mine, Bill Portlock, who was just recently retired from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, his recent hobby is taking portraits of birds in his yard, not getting side views, but getting a straight on shot at the face of the birds, and he's doing a great job on some of these. As you can see, these are more of his photos from basically last week when we had the snow. He had 4 to 6 inches of snow in his yard. Just went out there for about 2 hours to his various feeders, hung out about 10 to 12 feet away. The birds were not scared by him, and he just kept snapping away digital photos, and got some great shots for posterity he should be proud of. Also, the bird of the year for many of us has been the, quote, morning grosbeak. They hit you at daybreak, clean out your feeder, and they're back the next morning after you've filled it up. But this the eruption of evening grosbeaks has been fantastic. And this one picture here, I don't have it all in, but there's 42 evening grosbeaks queuing up on to get to somebody's feeder in Essex County. And the guy also had the gall to send me the picture with a red-headed woodpecker on his feeder at the same time. Usually I have English starlings. Okay, here's another kind of a breakthrough. Somebody was looking out their window and the husband said to the wife, "What's that?" The husband, a great photographer, starts cranking away the photo and sends it around to a lot of the key bird people in the state, and they all come back and say Cape May warbler. So that's unusual, but not any different than some of the hummingbirds I heard from some of you tonight. But there's things out there. So when you get snow this weekend and you're doing the Great Backyard Bird Count, pay attention to what's there, because invariably some great things pop up. So I was originally going to talk to you about container gardens and vultures, but I chickened out at the last minute, and we'll talk about birds in our yard, things we can do to make our yards attractive. Some people like gardens. I just love them because they bring in the right insects and bring in the birds I want to see. And there's some things we can do to fine tune and tweak that process based on technology and based on a lot of the findings on eBird, by Audubon, by Cornell, and a lot of the other institutions that follow population of birds and trends. I'm going to cheat a little bit in the end and also throw in some things about butterflies, because if you only have birds in your yard, you must have insects in your yard, and you must have the right plants in your yard. They kind of all go together. So you can do plantings in your yard, which will bring you in, fabulous birds, and why not bring in fabulous butterflies also? So, here's just a couple internet shots, but there's this interrelationship between plants and birds. And we've talked about hummingbirds tonight. And the one thing I would say that the hummingbirds love nectar, but their most important food source is insects. So having that buffet for them in your yard of insects and nectar, either through plants or through artificial means like feeders, is always a good thing. Birds to me, and a thing that I like to emphasize, the image of the canary in the coal mine is quite important. If birds are disappearing or particular insects are disappearing, it's really not a good sign. So getting out and seeing what's in our yard and tracking them for citizen science is really helpful. And I know a lot of you do that through your counts, and I urge you to continue to do that through using eBird and other things. I was going to say I had the pleasure one time of, I think a couple times, going to Harry and Rochelle's house, and where they have their feeders. This is perfect for them. It's perfect for the birds. You can see everything, and you can see kind of how they've kind of built their windows and their lives around being able to see feeders. And that's an important thing for both our own feeling good, but also getting the data for citizen science. Okay, we can fine tune our yards and gardens and neighborhoods by planning the right things. And really, I could end the briefing here and just say native plants, but you've all heard that before. But what native plants and how do I get them, we'll talk about a little later on. So the goals for this evening, I want to talk about 4 factors that really make up a habitat. A little bit about the birds in relation with habitats, some plants and butterfly, and not too much more about citizen science, because I think you all get that. But I will also pass to Pete and Tom and Charm and Sean a list of resources from tonight of some of the websites that I recommend you may want to look at. Okay, well, the big thing that's kind of changed in thinking over the last couple decades is really how significant native plants are for birds and for people, but also for insects, because there's many cases when we talk about butterflies, they have a host plant. And if you have that host plant, you'll have that butterfly. And if you have the right trees, you'll probably bring in the birds, because the birds have a chance to eat the insects off the tree. So it's a food chain issue as well as a aesthetic issue, having the right plants in your yard that attract the things that you're trying to get to. So instead of your yard, from the rest of this presentation, it's your habitat, you're part of it, and be a positive part of your habitat. So a definition of a habitat is pretty straightforward. It's pretty much everything that's out there that helps things grow and helps things reproduce. A common example of this is a butterfly garden, but in many cases, what we've produced in our yards are also, you could call them bird gardens. They don't necessarily have to be a garden. They can be our trees, our bushes, and everything else that's a planting in our yard. Here's a very nice yard with lovely gardens in the back, native plants in there, but it's really a habitat. I think that if I were to ask, Dr. Dash, there's probably a bazillion insects in there, and it's also visited by every bird that in the region. I think that lawn there could probably hold 50 Canada geese in a pinch. Okay, so small-scale habitats contribute to species survival. We originally had thoughts that our parks, our forests, our preserves, they are hugely important. But just as important, because they occupy more room on the earth, are our communities, our yards, and our homes. So if we can do a better job in our yards and treat them as habitats, we'll be helping out the environment. So the small bits add up. All these little houses that have trees in there that have nurtured them, I would hope that in each of these yards there was also some native plants, might have a bird feeder, but other things. And all this adds up to sustain species and bring things in that we may be interested in looking at and hopefully counting. The newest organization on the block is an interesting one. It's called the Homegrown National Park, and it's Dr. Doug Talamay from University of Delaware. And what it's about is trying to convert over a period of about 2.5 decades, trying to get people to convert a portion of each of their lawn to real native plants and other things that will attract insects and attract birds. And it's a great website, and I highly recommend it to everyone that they go in and take a look at it. And it's a very recent addition, but it's a chance for you to add your habitat and what's in your yard to a national database. So this is not what I had in mind about habitat. This was actually taken in Hampton Roads. many years ago. This is a internet photo, but everything you have in your yard counts. I would get rid of the artificial owl. I don't think they work for sailboats, and I know they don't work for yards. Anyone want to guess what this is called in the birding world? Well, it's called boring. So if we could get more species rather than monocultural surroundings, it really helps bring in the birds and the insects. So National Wildlife Federation, I think, has done it very well. They've brought it down to this property provides the basic habitat elements wildlife need to survive and to thrive: food, water, cover, and places to raise young. All these are very near and dear to us as birders, and it sometimes tells us some of the place we're going to look for the birds, but also some of the places we have to be concerned about if some of these things disappear, particularly those portions of the food chain, water, and cover. So in my own yard up in Northern Virginia, where I am tonight, as it's snowing, raining, hailing, spitting, whatever it's doing, sometimes I get so excited I lose control of my car. As I'm turning into the driveway, there's an owl, barred owl there on the post, but you can also see it's near my national habitat sign, because I have put in a water feature in the back, and with bird feeders and native plantings and things, I have really increased the number of species that visit my yard. My wife Kathy and I just love to spend time with a cup of coffee in our hands in the morning, just looking out at in the yard toward the feeders and the plantings, and seeing what's coming in, because your stories early about the clouds of bluebirds and other birds really occur if you have added things to your yard to really make it a bird-specific habitat. So yards and gardens and neighborhood important habitats. You can get your, they'll take your money and you can get a sign, but you can get your yard certified as a wildlife habitat by just certifying that you have the water, food, cover, and a place to raise their young. And it's pretty much a significant national movement that the National Wildlife Federation has started. You'll see various examples of it around the nation: butterfly way stations, bird habitats, Texas wildlife, and other things. But it's a great thing because it is having some impact on education of youth, and particularly during this time of COVID-19. I know at some of the nature conservancy sites that I support, we're having a lot more children coming in with their families on weekends and weekdays and things, and visiting parks and asking really good questions about what's there and where can I go to see it, and what's this tree and what's this plant and everything else. So I think it's one of the positive outcomes of many of us being homebound. And there's where I mentioned the habitat certifications. But let's examine these four basic habitat elements. And the first one is obviously food. And that's the one that I think attracts, in many cases, the birds that we see when they're eating and gathering food. So food is at the top of the list. And back to Dr. Doug Talamay, if you have a native tree and you look at an oak in this case on the right side of the slide, it attracts over 532 reported different species of caterpillars and things. Where if you have a tree of heaven and invasive, it only brings in 6. So it's kind of a no-brainer which one you want to have in your yard, but also which ones you want to try to sustain in your neighborhood and make sure they're not getting chopped down and other things. It makes a big difference. And Dr. Talamay, who's also tied to that national park movement, is the author of several rather good books on bringing nature into your home and your yard and enhancing your habitat. One of the studies he did with his graduate students looked at how many caterpillars had to be eaten by a chickadee and how far they had to fly to get them and what they preferred and everything, looking at different types of trees as hosts. The nest is where the starred location is, but the number 2s were the ones that were the favored by the birds. But the bird had to bring in an enormous number of caterpillars to feed a brood in the literally in the 5,000 to 8,000 range. So you can see the importance of having trees and other shrubbery in the area that has the insects that they need. And it's a very good program you can find more about either through Neighborhood Watch, which you're familiar with, or there's some information about this with the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute. And just a graphic of many of the things that depend on our oaks in the winged world of insects and birds and bats, and also reptiles and amphibians and other plants. So it's an amazing organism, the tree and the oak. So there's just some of the caterpillars that could wind up on your oak tree. And I got this specifically for Sean because this hit my email box today at about 4:30, and it was released today by the National Geographic as another good study on insects that had some great photography in it that I will list for everyone. So we're in Hampton, Virginia, and we have this problem with food, and the problem with food is that eagles are opportunists and will go anywhere for a meal. But this is actually a picture taken up in Alaska, and if you can find the YouTube video, it's one of the funniest ones you'll see, where this older woman has gone into the I'll call it the Food Lion there in her car. And she comes out, and the pickup had a load of fish in the back, but they forgot to put the cover on it. So this is up in Homer, Alaska. So half the, I guess, the eagles in the community descended on that car, and she had to call the police. And the video, the policeman is there trying not to cry. He's laughing so hard as you have these, I think it was 30-some eagles on the 3 cars taking turns going in and getting the fish. So it's food, but I recommend not putting dead fish in your yard. Okay, well, let's move on and talk about the first of the programs that allows you to help figure out what's going on in your yard and contribute to citizen science and give you feedback on what might be a good thing to have in your yard. It's Audubon Hummingbird at Home. And you'll see all my pictures of hummingbirds there, to include one of a pseudo hummingbird called a hummingbird moth there in the lower left. But what it asks you to do is you see things at your feeder to click on the box and send them feedback on what the hummingbird was actually taking nectar from, whether you're taking it from a feeder or they have a long list of plants there, and which plants were the hummingbird using as a food source. So it's another interesting way to get information in your yard. It also gives you feedback on another set of slides from Audubon on what things you may want to plant in your yard that do attract hummingbirds and other species. And hummingbirds are amazing. I know that the discussion there of the rufous and the Allen, and I think those are the 2 logical ones. I had the privilege of living for 4 years in the hummingbird capital of North America, Sierra Vista, Arizona, and there was usually a regular 12 species you would have pretty much year round coming in and out, and but just amazing to sit there and watch them in a garden as they move around. And there's another one that really likes a water feature. So if you have a water feature in your yard, that also helps you attract birds and attract hummingbirds. So all different kinds of water features are appeal to hummingbirds, probably more than any other bird I know. And you can have some very small things, drip things, little fountains and other things, and they make a significant difference. And you can see they kind of even sit there, not even drinking, but enjoying them in the heat. So water is very important, the second factor after food. And there's a lot of ways to do this. You can get drippers, you can have a puddle, you can have a hollowed out rock, but that little bit of water and that moving with a little bit of movement in it is a big attractor to birds. And you can see in this great picture taken in Richmond of a bluebird in a man-made little fountain that the person had created. Okay, well, let's move then from, we've covered food, we've covered water, and now let's get into a little bit more about cover and some of the other things. Obviously, a lot of these trees, in addition to their benefits for the birds, are becoming very important in government and community planning as a further way to sequester carbon. And so protecting our forest also protects our birds. And I'm very proud to be part of the Old Growth Forest Network and some other organizations that are really working to improve habitat by sustaining forest. So cover. We've talked about that, but the places to raise their young. Here is a hummingbird in a small nest, and you can see a hummingbird nest size are about a quarter. But a very important thing that your yard, I say a wood pile, a brush pile, plant matter, shrubs, all these things count, and usually wind up places for birds to grow. And you've all seen this wonderful picture of some bird bringing material to build a nest in a cavity area. I was impressed by that discussion of the downy woodpecker that was coming in and using the box, and also other ones that find cavities to put in. And of course we have the wood duck, which likes cavities. I don't think any of us have wood ducks in our yard, but we certainly see them in the drag and run throughout the spring, summer, and fall season, and they're spectacular to see. And the baby wood ducks are as cute as they can be. And birds, not just in trees, but on the ground, as we know, and bird nests can be anywhere. So you can be fostering a group of birds in any point in your yard. So we want to foster our habitat. It's just not our yard or garden in our neighborhood. So let's talk about a little bit about birds. This is a beautiful summer cannon bird on elderberry, with climate change, it's having an impact. It was said we're having more birds tend to move north and displacing other birds or staying longer and things like that. So the food sources are one of the critical factors in a lot of birds' existence and their decision to move. And I think a lot was found out through the Virginia Breeding Bird Atlas study of what's actually here. At 5 o'clock today, I had a great discussion with some people up in Vermont, and they're talking about all the changes that are occurring in the habitats in Vermont, and how much longer birds are staying, and different arrival times and everything else. So it's not just in Virginia, but it's pretty much up the Atlantic flyway. So the data we collect and the things we do in our yard become very important. So they call it the boiling frog syndrome. We're in this, but we've got climate change, sea level rise, decline of insectivores, which is really serious, the insect apocalypse. All these things are going on at the same time. And I love this quote from someone down in the Hampton Roads area, where you see fish swimming on your road, you've got major problems. And we've had a lot of changes in the past 2 decades that I know I've been in Virginia. So with Virginia having as many different municipalities as it does, we're kind of the epicenter of a lot of things that we need to do, both as a public entity with our governments. But the one thing we can control ourselves is our yards. We can make our habitats better on our own without any government assistance, zoning, or anything else. And I would also say that one of the things that makes environmental things somewhat difficult is each one of these different counties in this portion of Virginia in some ways goes after problem solving for habitat and sustaining woodlands and things and buffers in slightly different ways. So it's a great challenge out there, and I hope we're all involved in helping resolve some of these issues. Okay, so we've talked a little bit now in theory, but let me give you what I think are some of the better sources to figure out the birds you can get in your yards if you pair with the right plants in your yards. Now, a yard full of native plants is a yard full of well-fed birds. I've said that, that's great, but let's get to some specifics. One of the best specifics you'll find is some of the information you can get on All About Birds from Cornell, and also about Audubon. And I'll just mention here that Cornell for several decades has really good information on their web pages that you can pick a particular plant that you may be interested in this case, staghorn sumac, and it'll give you some information about its growing season, type of fruiting it was have, its color, but it also tells you what birds are attracted. And earlier someone was mentioning pileated woodpeckers. I'm fortunate in my yard at my feeder, I frequently have 2 pileated woodpeckers, and it's great. I don't have a staghorn sumac, but all these things add up. So if you're thinking of adding a plant into your yard, there's some great sources here for learning further information. So Virginia creeper, which is something that I think is found everywhere, is also a don't cut it down. It's a great source for birds. And another one is flowering dogwood. A lot of birds love dogwoods, and it helps bring them into your yard. They also have on their site which birds, which plants. So you can almost do as a designer thing. You can pick a bird that you're interested in potentially drawing into your yard over time, and click on it. And when you click on it, it'll bring up a little bit about the, we'll say the eastern screech owl, which I'd certainly like to have in my yard, and everyone will love to have in their yard, but it really needs big trees, and you're not going to get there with just plantings of shrubs and ornamentals. So it tells you a lot about the life of the bird, but it tries to put it in context with the type of trees or the type of plants that that bird is interested in and dependent on. And just running around some more, like a Carolina chickadee and some of the things that it eats, and ruby-throated hummingbirds. There's no surprise there, but it gives you a very detailed list of the key plants that these birds will seek out. Now, Audubon, I really think has done it best and has made the most user-friendly version. They have a complete section of their webpage called Plants for Birds. And what you do is you open the page, put in your email address, put in the zip code you're interested in, and hit search. So what I did was put in one of the Hampton Roads zip codes, 23666, and you have this page, and then you'll have some tabs down here which says all type of plants, all plant resources, and attracts any type of birds. And these are little tabs that you can pull down. So you can see this is just part of the tab. So we'll say I wanted to have add some grasses or annuals, perennials in my yard, and I was interested in probably seeds, and I wanted to attract maybe the vireos. So if I made those picks and clicked on it, it will bring me up results. So I had down here annual perennials, I was looking for seeds, I was looking for vireos, and it will give me a list, and this list is cut off, but it's talking about the lance leaf tick seed and narrow leaf mountain mint. And it will also give you the list of nurseries in your areas in many cases that will provide those to you either through a mail order nursery or an in-person nursery. So it helps you get to all that information. So you can pair a bird with a plant, and you can also do this, which I'll talk about later on, you can do it with a butterfly plant also, not on the website of the North American Butterfly Association. So this is kind of a trend, and they're geographically focused. And you can see up here at the top, if you happen to live in North Carolina, the Audubon chapter there will come out to your yard and help you with this process of giving you advice on plantings that will attract birds. So it's a nice trend, but I find the website to be extremely useful. You can also go in and just search through literally hundreds and hundreds of plants, and we'll say I love American basswood. It's just beautiful, and it talks about its attributes. It attracts butterflies, caterpillars, but it also tells you the other type of birds that like to use that tree as a food source or a nesting source, or is important in some way in their life cycle if they can find it. So and then you see, you can add that to your plant list. You can click buy now, and it'll give you advice on where you may be able to find that product. And you can slice and dice this in different ways. We'll say I'm interested in the alpine violet. Well, it gives you all the birds that use the alpine violet, and also has pictures in there of the different plants. Also on the website's a lot of information on different ways to lure more birds to your yards with native plants and different types of flowers and features like bird feeders and water and things like that. So it's a rich source of information, and Audubon has found that link with the plant community to be very important in them getting more people interested in birding and growing the Audubon Society. So I urge you to take a look at that site. There's a lot of stuff in there. And of course, Audubon will sell you a sign also you can put in your yard saying you've done your plantings for birds. So, this is a result of all of your hard work. This is from, through eBird and Cornell, where if you look up at the top here, I'm tracking the week of the months moving through the years. And this is the movement of magnolia warblers migration. And you see how it blasts through Virginia in May, moving up to Canada and New England. And you can see, so if you wanted to attract magnolia warblers, you got to have the stuff in place in time, and for sure, and be very lucky. But then as they blast back through Virginia on their way back to Central America. But this is the millions of data points that we've provided on eBird on where these birds are at a particular location on a particular date that have been massively dealt with by the computers that come up with these animations. And the Cornell Institute of Ornithology, you can go in and look at quite a few birds on their migration paths through this. So we talked a little bit about Audubon Hummingbird at Home, which was the one that allowed you to try to match what plants the hummingbirds were hanging out in your yard, and then also you could list the feeders. But also they're also interested if you have any information on any birds that are eating insects. And in this particular case, unfortunately, the hummingbird gets captured by the insect. I think one of my favorite signs, Harry, is this in your yard? Okay, let me talk just briefly a little bit about butterflies, but it's kind of the same thing. Butterflies are, to me, they're really flying flowers. And if you have a great yard, you're going to have butterflies, you're going to have birds, and you're probably going to have a lot of good vegetation in your yard and in your neighborhood. So there's really only 5 butterfly families, the major butterfly families in Virginia, and a lot of them are ones that you've seen. You may not know them by name, but I think we all agree that they're spectacular to see. So all these plants, the tiger swallowtail, the zebra swallowtail, the black swallowtail, all are in our area, and all depend on our native plants and are all out there in the habitat when we're bird watching. So it's great when we see them in our yard with birds. But I'm just quickly going through this, but a whole bunch of different categories of butterflies are really indicators of health on when they show up. Do they show up on time? Are they successfully staying, and what are they eating, and all those other things, and same thing we do with bird watching. The falcate orange tip is one of our early arrivals in spring, and it's quite a beautiful bird, and this is a male. Beautiful butterfly, not bird, I'm sorry on that. And but one of the things that's really one of the first things in spring, and it's one that you can attract by having the right places to go. And this one looks for woodlands and woodland edges. So when we're out there in the spring at your spring bird count, also keep track of what else you see that's flying. And it's hosted by, you can figure out which plants it hosts on and its caterpillar hosts on. And it gives you some hints for where you may be able to see them. Well, I have to ask the question. I didn't realize that Vladimir Putin was a butterfly aficionado. Actually, he's not. There's no such butterfly as the falcate red tip. This is a classic version of Photoshop. That's the real picture. So just a couple more quick butterfly shots of things that you can see. But I just want to talk about the variegated fritillary, which because one of my friends is a great camera buff and sets up cameras in his yard all the time. And this is basically his yard after planting mountain mint in a small area just by the hundreds after about 2 years. And it just adds to the beauty of your garden, and certainly is also attractive to birds, because some of the birds clearly go after butterflies as a food source. And once again, this organization will sell you a sign you can put in your yard also. So getting away from the variegated fritillaries, another great source is the Native Plant Societies of Virginia. In a lot of their pamphlets and brochures, they have information on birds and the type of plants that you may want to put in to attract the birds. And specific gardening to attract butterflies. You can, pick a particular plant, but likewise, you can figure out what butterflies will come to it. In many ways, that's somewhat of a draw to what birds you may see in the area also. So once again, we're back to this small scale quality habitat contributing to species survival. It really is important. The smallest yard, or a single feeder, or a small number of plants, a tree, somebody's going to use it. They may use it as a perch, they may use it for cover, they may use it for food, but all the things that we can provide from the natural world that are supportive of birds and insects are pretty important. And one of the first places to start is getting the right plantings in your yard. And I hope I've provided some information tonight that may be useful in those pursuits. So from the birds and the butterfly, I'd like to really thank all who support native plants. They're really important, and understand that gardens and yards are the nurseries and preschools for birds and a lot of other things. So all of you that feed birds, provide water, or provide shelter to raise your young, hats off to all of you, but also ask you to look out your window and help count them, because that's really important information for those of you in the Hampton Road Bird Club supporting eBird and citizen science projects like the now ended Virginia Breeding Bird Atlas, and all the things you do on your spring counts and all your other counts. So once again, another plug for this weekend for everybody looking out their window for at least 15 minutes and see what's out there. I'm looking forward to it because there's snow in the forecast up here, and I'm going to be down on a hike at the Nature Conservancy's Voorhees Preserve in Westmoreland County on Saturday, and I'm hoping to see some good things down there too. So with that, I'd like to end it and see if I can answer any questions, but I really appreciate the chance to talk to the group tonight. There's some exciting things happening in the world of birds, but there's also some depressing things happening in the world of birds, as we all know, and all of us contributing as a team to helping birds survive and protecting habitat really goes a long way, and is a selfish pursuit by all of us because we love birds, we want to see them. So let's keep planting and keeping things going in our gardens. So let me stop my share here, and I think we're all back live, Sean, and I'll take any questions.
Jeff, I have a question.
Yes, Kathy.
Yes, Kathy. 2 questions. We recently moved here from New York, and so we're getting reacquainted with birds. And we live in an HOA, and we're trying to convince the HOA to, one, put in a garden. But I also wanted to know if you have any recommendations to any resources that you could send me to quote, educate the board of directors in having a habitat for birds and butterflies.
I have 2 that I'll give you. I would go to the Virginia Master Gardeners and also the Virginia Native Plant Society, because they do have some things, and they I think one of these groups also talks about how gardens tend to enhance property values, and that usually has some impact on HOAs, that it's an upside activity, not something that's detracting from the community.
Was Virginia Master Gardeners, and what was the other one?
The Virginia Native Plant Society.
Plants, okay. And the other question I had, just a quick one. When you were showing that blasting of migration, that was through eBird, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank
You can go on. I can't remember where that is on eBird, but there's a big section in there where they have, and they're adding birds all the time to it based on data. But the migration data is fabulous, because it allows you to see in another visual form of when certain birds are moving through Virginia.
Okay.
And that's a good thing. And you can blow it up to a scale where you can really, you know, almost see which counties the birds are passing through based on observations over a period, in some cases, all the way back to the 1900s.
Oh, thank you. That sounds great.
Now, Harry and I were out there in the 1900s counting these. I just want to tell you that.
So
Well,
there's
Other
no
questions?
anymore.
Go ahead.
I said, so there's no pterodactyls anymore.
Not on this call. But there's a lot of them in Washington this week. Hey, I want to say that I was, you know, as a member of the Friends of Dragon Run, Sean Dash gave us a great presentation on a lot of aspects of Chesapeake Bay life that many of us were thrilled to learn. So, Sean, thank you for that.
I appreciate it. And thank you for speaking tonight.
So if there are no further questions, I'd be glad to sign off and go take the Basset Hounds out.
Well, thank you again, Jeff. I enjoyed this evening.
Jeff.
It was nice to see everyone. Let's thank Jeff one more time and hope everyone is well. And good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Hey.